Quick thing before we jump in, I've got a goal, and I need your help. We're on a mission to hit 100 subscribers, and I know we can get there fast. It doesn't take much, just a quick click of that subscribe button, but it makes a massive difference for this channel. And if you're with me on this, drop a 100 in the comments so I know you're part of the journey. Alright, now let's dive into what we carried forward without knowing.
When you hear the phrase ancient rituals, you probably imagine crumbling temples, flickering torches, and ceremonies lost to time. You might even think that was thousands of years ago. Humanity's moved on. But what if I told you that some of those practices never actually disappeared? That the same thinking, the same logic, the same spirit is alive right now. Not in the shadows of ancient ruins, but in modern cities, corporate offices, and even places we call centers of progress. Over the next 20 minutes, I'm going to connect the dots from the stone altars of the past to the polished boardrooms and institutional systems of today. And by the end, you'll see something that once you notice, you can't unsee. Because the real story isn't about history, it's about how history is still happening right under our noses. Before we dive into the stories and examples, we need to understand a simple but powerful idea, something I'm going to call sacrificial logic. It's this: the belief that you can give up or end one life or even a group of lives to get something you think is greater in return. In the ancient world, that often meant offering a person in a ritual ceremony to keep the gods happy, bring rain, or win war. It was seen as an exchange. We give this and we get that. Now here's the twist. The same thinking still drives some decisions today. Only now the language has changed. It's dressed up with phrases like for the greater good, necessary losses, or inevitable trade-offs. And this is why you will hear me say again and again, the practice may have changed shape, but the reasoning behind it hasn't gone anywhere. So, in a few minutes, we're going to step into the temple of the Aztecs, walk through the street of ancient Carthage, and stand in the public squares of Rome, so you can see how this logic worked back then, before we follow its trail into the modern age. Let's rewind to a world before Christ, a world where the idea of giving up a life to secure something bigger wasn't just accepted, it was celebrated. Picture this. You're standing in the heart of Tenochtitlan, the capital of the Aztec Empire. The Templo Mayor rises before you, a massive stone pyramid. Crowd fills the square. At the top, a ceremony is underway. Archaeologists tell us these weren't rare events. They've uncovered skull towers. Yes, literal walls built from human skulls. Part of the city's display of devotion to their gods. The belief, without these offerings, the sun might not rise, the rains might not come, and the world could fall into chaos. Now, cross the ocean to ancient Carthage, in what's now Tunisia. Here, Greek and Roman writers described a place called the Tophet, an open-air site where the remains of infants were found in urns. The inscription tell of offerings made to deities like Baal Hammon and Tanit, especially in times of crisis. Whether you believe every detail of the ancient accounts or not, the archaeological evidence makes one thing clear. This was a culture where ending the life of the most vulnerable was thought to secure the future of the community. And there's the Greco-Roman world. Human offerings were less common, but not unheard of. Ancient myths, like the story of Iphigenia, tell of leaders who believed the winds would only favor their fleet if a young girl was given up. Even as the centuries passed, Rome kept certain rituals that involved ending lives in the name of protecting the state. In each of these societies, the pattern was the same. The act was seen as cruel, it was seen as necessary, and it was almost always approved by the people at the top, the priests, the rulers, the decision makers. What's fascinating and chilling is that these ancient cultures didn't think of these acts as failures of morality. They saw them as the height of responsibility. And that's what makes sacrificial logic so dangerous. It can dress itself up as duty, even as progress. While these ancient cultures normalized what we've been calling sacrificial logic, the Bible enters the scene with a completely different voice, and it's not a quiet one. The God of Israel looks at these practices of surrounding nations, offering children in fire, dedicating them to idols, and he says no. In Leviticus 18, verse 21, he commands, "Do not give any of your children to be offered to Molech. You must not profane the name of your God." That is strong language, and it means this isn't just a bad habit. It's an insult to who God is. The Bible even names specific places. One of the most infamous was the Valley of Hinnom. This is where some in Judah built a place called Tophet, where they burnt their sons and daughters in the fire to foreign gods. And God responds in Jeremiah 7, verse 31, saying, "I never commanded it, nor did it enter my mind." In other words, this isn't just wrong. It's completely foreign to his nature. And then there's the prophetic voice. People like Micah and Amos, calling out a deeper truth. God doesn't want endless offerings, even animal ones, if they're divorced from justice, mercy, and humility. Micah 6, 7 through to 8 asks, "If giving your firstborn could pay for your sins," and then answers with a resounding no. Here's the radical shift. Instead of demanding the powerless give up their lives for the powerful, the Bible points toward a future where the all-powerful would give up his life for the powerless. That's where Jesus comes in, the ultimate reversal. The cross becomes the last and only needed offering. The sacrificial system isn't just paused, it's fulfilled and completed. That's why, for Christians, any modern version of sacrificial logic, whether it's in the name of culture, politics, or progress, is a return to something God already judged and rejected. When we think about those ancient practices, the temples, the public ceremonies, the belief that certain lives must be given up so others can thrive, it's tempting for us to say, well, at least we're beyond that. But history after the Bible shows us that we simply changed the stage, changed the clothing, and changed the language. But the logic or the spirit stayed exactly the same. Let's start with this transatlantic slave trade. For over 300 years, millions of Africans were taken from their homes, packed into ships under conditions so brutal that many never made it to shore. Those who survived were sold as property, forced into labor that built entire economies. The reasoning, profit and prosperity for others. The altar wasn't made of stone anymore. It was made of marketplaces, shipping routes, and plantation fields. Move forward to the 19th century and meet John Marion Sims, often called the father of modern gynecology. His surgical breakthroughs came at the cost of repeated invasive operations on enslaved black women. Women like Anarcha, Lucy, and Betsey, without anesthesia. Their suffering was reframed as progress. But if we strip away the polite medical language, it's the same old pattern. The powerless are offered up for the gain of the powerful. Then there's a Tuskegee Syphilis Study in the 20th century. Hundreds of African American men were told they were getting free health care, but in reality, treatment was withheld so researchers could watch how the disease progressed. Even after a cure was found, they were still left untreated, all in the name of science. And then there's genocide, the deliberate erasing of entire peoples, whether it was the Holocaust, the Armenian genocide, or Rwanda in 1994. The justification was always cloaked in the words like purity, security, or stability. In each case, the decision was made that some groups needed to be removed so the rest could move forward. Different century, different tools, different explanations, but the underlying logic or the underlying spirit exactly the same as the ancients. Some must be unalived so others can have what they want, and it's almost always framed as necessary, even noble.
Do you believe in sin? When I say believe, I don't mean to believe in committing sin. Do you believe there is such a thing as sin?
Well, I think the greatest sin in the world is bringing children into the world that have disease from their parents, that have no chance in the world to be a human being, practically. Delinquents, prisoners, all sorts of things just marked when they're born. That, to me, is the greatest sin that people can commit.
There's one modern practice that mirrors the structure of ancient sacrifice more closely than most people ever realize. It's not done on a stone altar. It's done in clean, well-lit rooms, and instead of being called a ritual, it's called a procedure. I'm talking about what's often referred to as terminating a pregnancy. In public debates, it's framed in terms like choice, rights, and sometimes medical necessity. But if we look past the labels, the core structure is hauntingly familiar. A smaller, more vulnerable life is ended so that a stronger, more established life can continue without disruption. The reasons people give are varied. Some are deeply personal: financial instability, lack of support, fear of how life will change. They desire to pursue education or a career. In other cases, the pressure comes from outside, from partners, families, even societal expectations. But in the end, the pattern echoes the old one. One life is exchanged for the perceived benefit of another. Now, this is a deeply sensitive topic, and I want to be clear. There are situations that involve real danger to the mother's health, or pregnancies resulting from violence. Those are painful, complex, and deserve compassion, not cold slogans. But even in these hardest cases, we have to ask, are we solving one tragedy by creating another? In the ancient world, people offered up lives to secure a better harvest, a safer city, or favor from the gods. Today, the reasons have changed, but the logic often remains: ending the life of one so another can have what they believe they need. From a Christian perspective, this isn't just about a procedure. It's about a worldview. It's about whether life is a gift we receive or a resource we control. And the Bible's answer is clear. Life belongs to God, and the only greater good that required a life to be given was already accomplished, once for all, on the cross. This way of thinking, that some lives can be given up so others can get ahead, doesn't stop with that one issue. It shows up in other very real ways today. Think about human trafficking. Around the world, millions of people are trapped in systems of exploitation, forced labor, exploitation for profit, and other forms of abuse. Their freedom, safety, and dignity are traded away so someone else can gain money, influence, or personal satisfaction. That's the same core idea we've seen for thousands of years, treating people as objects to be used rather than image bearers with value. Or consider illegal organ harvesting. In some places, the bodies of vulnerable individuals are targeted for their parts, which are then sold to extend or improve the lives of others. It's marketed as life-saving for the recipient, but it destroys the life or the health of the donor, often without consent. And then there's the way war is sometimes waged. You'll hear terms like collateral damage, a sanitized way of saying that civilian lives are lost in the pursuit of strategic objectives. Of course, sometimes tragic losses happen even in just causes, but there's a dangerous line when leaders start viewing those lives as acceptable cost, rather than sacred lives to be protected. Whether it's in a back alley, a black market network, or a government war room, the logic is the same. Certain people's lives are treated as expendable for a goal someone else values more. And that's exactly what we've seen throughout history, just in different packaging. Here's the pattern we've seen. In the ancient world, in the pages of history, and in headlines today, the powerless are given up so the powerful can keep what they have or get what they want. That's sacrificial logic, and left unchecked, it just keeps reinventing itself. But the message of the Bible flips that logic upside down. Instead of the weak being given up for the strong one, Jesus, gave himself for the weak. On the cross, he became the final offering. Hebrews 10 says, his sacrifice was once for all. No more altars, no more victims, no more logic that says someone else has to pay so I can live. That means every system, every practice, every justification that says some lives don't matter as much is not just morally wrong, it's out of step with reality as God defines it. The price has already been paid. So here's my challenge to you. Start looking for this pattern in the world around you. Listen for it in the way people talk about necessary losses or greater good. Ask yourself, who's paying the price? And is that price theirs to pay? And if you're a follower of Jesus, you have a calling to speak up for the vulnerable, to step into the gap for those being treated as expendable, and to point to the one who already gave himself so no one else ever had to. The altars of the past may be gone, but the mindset is still here. And now that you see it, you can be part of challenging it, and not just resisting the system, but by living in the light of the one sacrifice that set us all free.